Hello, my name is Fernando Toro and welcome to the exposure compensation video. Exposure compensation is very important because it's going to improve the quality of your pictures more than any other single thing. Like, you can get a better camera, a better lens. You can learn the rule of leading lines or of thirds or anything like that. And really, exposure compensation is going to be better. It's going to help you more to get better pictures. So let's take a look at how that works. I have a warning here that this is a little bit like when you get a board game or when you're learning a game of cards and it seems really complicated. You start reading the instructions and it seems complicated, but you stick with it because you know it's a board game and you're going to be able to master it, or it's a game of cards and it's not that difficult in the end. However, when you look at something like this, you start hearing the technical terms and you no, this is not for me. It's too complicated, and then it's a shame because you stop trying to learn it, and it's something that could have helped you a lot. So I'm going to make this very easy, and by the end of this video, you're going to be very competent. You're going to master this. Exposure. The camera has something called the shutter. And the shutter is closed, something that opens and closes. So it's closed, and that doesn't allow any light to hit the film in the day of films. Or today is the sensor, which is like a computer chip. So the shutter opens and allows the sensor to be exposed to the light that makes up the image. So by extension, the same word exposed means the settings. So that's the ISO, that's the shutter speed, that's the aperture. A mixture of those settings is going to allow the camera, the computer and the camera, it's going to decide what those settings are so that the sensor gets the right amount of light. The camera, in order to determine how long the exposure has to be, or how wide the aperture has to be, or what ISO to use, it's going to use a light meter. Now things have gotten a lot more complex. They've broken down the frame, the entire frame, or all the area that's going to be a part of your picture, into different zones, and each one of those has different values, or how important it is. And then on top of that, you can decide. Like for example, Nikon's has files with thousands of images. When you take a picture, it compares it to the database of images that it has, and then if it finds something similar, then it's going to know how to make the exposure. And other companies have other proprietary software, and so it gets very complicated. And on top of all of that, then you have that you can change how the exposure is measured. So you can tell the camera, all right, calculate my exposure based on the entire frame, and that's the normal setting. But then you can also say, okay, let's center weigh it, or meaning I'm going to, calculate it, but give more importance to the center of the frame and not as much to the edges. And even you can say, listen, calculate the exposure, camera, based only on the middle of the frame, okay? And that would be called spot exposure. The important thing is that no matter how complicated or how sophisticated, the photographer is the one that really knows how the image has to be exposed. So if the photographer has an input into how the decision is made, then the exposure is going to be better. Wow. I tried to take a picture as badly as possible, and I think I succeeded. So yeah, this is the basement of my house, and I have two pieces of fabric, one black and one white. The black one maybe you can't see as well. It's on the left of the white one. So as you can see, that's it. One is completely black, one white. I'm going to take a picture of each one of those with no compensation. The camera is set to automatic, and just take a picture of each one where nothing else shows, just the white or just the black. Incredible, huh? I wasn't kidding with that 17%. So this is it. One of these two is white, the other one is black. And they both look very similar, because that's what the camera did. If it was black, it said, no, I have to give it more light until it's 17%. And if it was white, I said, no, I'm not going to give it that much light because then it won't be 17%. And so that's what it did. And I put here the little note that it's not because my camera is cheap or is old or anything. I have an up-to-date camera, professional, very good. So this is the way cameras are today. This is how it looks, exposure compensation. Here you have a little wheel, and it's not always going to be a little wheel, but what it always is going to be is something that has 0 in the middle, and then it goes to +1, +2, and then on the other side -1, -2. Sometimes you'll see it through the viewfinder. Sometimes you'll see it in a little screen on the side, you know, these LCD screens. Sometimes you'll see it like this. And not only that, sometimes instead of going to +1, +2, it'll go to +1, +2, +3. And again, it'll go to -3. And sometimes it won't even have values like this. Like in very old cameras, it just says lighter, 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 and then darker, darker till darkest. Obviously, if you hit the dial towards the plus side, it's going to make it it's going to make the image lighter all the way to 2. Then it's at the lightest, and conversely, if you go towards the negative part, then it gets progressively darker. I took the same images of the same 2 pieces of fabric, and now I went to -2. Interestingly, not only they're both around the same again in terms of darkness, but they're not completely dark. They're not completely black. And that means the -2, it never made it black. But this is again because this is a very extreme case. Normally an image is not just going to be one thing only. It's going to have different elements, and then if part of what was in the image is black, then for sure, yeah, at -2 it's going to be black. And if you go all the way to +2, then this is what you get. Now here you can kind of tell for the first time which one is the white piece of fabric and which one's the black one. The one on the right is the black and has been all along. The one on the left is the white one. But again, even though it has some darker spots, like on the left, it's some places in the center is even brighter than the other one. So on average, they're about the same. Now I'm going to have a frame that is white and just has a little bit of black. And let's see what happens. So in this case, you can see that the black is completely black. And the white is not completely white. And remember I was telling you the different types of metering? And my camera was set to spot metering. So it really was taking the metering cues from the center of the frame, which is around here. Yeah, the gray area should be a lot brighter. So this one probably has the same mistake, yeah. So on the other hand, in this case, this is a lot brighter, all right? You can make this experiment yourself, right? Because I made this little mistake here, I'm sorry. But again, do this experiment. Take a black, if you don't have a black, you know, maybe a black shirt and then a white sock or something, and you can do this and see how it turns out. Yeah, so those examples were a little bit abstract. Now we're going to get into more reality. Let's look at this. Yeah, cute image, and we know that we had to go to plus, right? But it's not +1 or +2. It's actually brighter than that. In my case, my camera, I went to manual and made it even brighter, because in reality, it's very rare that you're going to take a picture as bright as this one, like overall as bright as this one. It almost never happens. But then if you ever have to, then it's nice to have a camera that can go to manual, and then you can achieve things even as extreme as this, or as extreme as this, which is almost completely black, the frame. But it's a nice, neat effect, and that's how I would do it. -2 would never be enough. And you remember from where I had the black fabric, and I went to -2, and it wasn't like this at all. There's just no chance. This is interesting because here we have 2 images, and which one is exposed correctly? They're both exposed correctly. And that is because the image below, the bridge, the river, and the city are exposed correctly, and the image above, the shoes, are exposed correctly, or the sandals are exposed correctly. But what exposure compensation was used in this image? And we have to think about it for a second. The image, like the river and all of that, probably is 17%. Okay? But the bottom right corner is black, making the overall image darker. And because the image is darker, the computer wants to make it lighter so that it will be 17%. So it's going to be lighter. So the river and the bridge and the city are going to be lighter than they need to be. So I have to go and make it darker again. So I would go to minus. So the exposure compensation here would probably be minus 1/3 or minus 2/3. Because that's how exposure compensation goes. Usually it goes by thirds. The image above is the other, it goes in the other way. Like when I said in the image below, it's going to make it lighter, but never as light as you have in the image above. It will never make it that bright. So the image above, you actually have to tell the camera to give you more light than it wants to. So that would be plus, this would be probably exposure compensation about a plus 1 1/3 or something like that. Maybe even 1 2/3. No, maybe 1 1/3, something like that. And the reason I'm not sure is because the camera saves settings. So the camera is going to know at what time I took the picture and what lens I was using, etc. But it doesn't save the information about the exposure compensation, unfortunately. So I don't remember exactly, but I can make the decision all over again. And even though I don't know exactly, I can't tell you, oh, this is minus 1 2/3, and that's it. So if I can't tell you that, then, obviously you're not going to know it. But you don't have to know it. All you have to do is, if you don't know whether to go up or down, to go to the plus or to the minus sign, then you're totally lost. Then you would have to take like 10 pictures to get it correct. And just go to the minus and to the plus side indistinctly and a lot or a little. But if you kind of know, okay, it should be around minus 1/3 or minus 1 2/3, then all you need to do is fine tune it. Then if you go and look at the back of the camera and say, okay, no, this is too bright, or no, this is too dark, and then you just fine tune a little bit. Now let's take a look at this image. This image is interesting because it reminds me to tell you something else. Okay, in this image, the grass behind, this is a Scottish cow, is lighter than the actual Scottish cow. So what that will do is that it's going to make the face darker than proper exposure. So in this case, I want to go plus, and probably plus 1/3 or plus 2/3. So I have to go to plus, and that's going to cause another problem altogether. And the problem that it's going to cause is that now the grass, which was brighter, now is going to get even brighter, which I don't want, because when you're taking a picture, people should be drawn to your primary subject, and things that draw people's attentions are things that are bright, things that are in sharp focus, things that have a lot of contrast. So here the face has contrast and it's sharp, but it's not the brightest thing. So that's one kind of minus. So actually what I did in this image is I took the grass, and in Lightroom, I have a video on introduction to Lightroom, and I'll have more videos on that software. It's an amazing software. So I took this and I made the grass a little darker than it was, in the actual picture. And there are other ways of solving that problem that I'll talk to you about a little later, which is bracketing, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, guys, so this is the end of part 1, and part 2 is going to be on the next video. See you at the next video.